Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Tuesday, February 15th, Sioux Falls City Council meeting. Before we read our roll,
I was just out talking to the Girl Scouts. I'm so sorry I was late. Remind me your pack number. 41425. So thank you for the great questions, girls, and thank you for the free box of cookies. I can accept that, right? Can I accept that, City Attorney? Okay, I can accept that gift.
Only if he
okay.
shares.
We'll pass them around during the meeting here. So thanks for coming. We'll get started tonight with our meeting by reading our roll.
Council members Brecky.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Jensen. Kiley. Here. Neitzert. Here. Selberg. Here. Sale. Here. Starr.
Here. All right, back with us to give our invocation, Reverend Brett Best from Emmanuel Baptist Church. Reverend Best, thanks for being back with us this evening. I'd ask that you stand up for his invocation and then stay standing for our Pledge of Allegiance.
If you're inclined, please pray with me. Our God, creator of all, tonight I want to ask you for two things. One is for imagination and the other is courage. Imagination to see ourselves as the kind of people you want us to be, and the courage to be that person. Imagination to see what kind of city you would like us to build, and the courage to build that city. Thank you for these who have gathered. Thank you for these who serve. Thank you for all your wonderful gifts to us. And we pray with earnest hearts. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, Reverend Best, for the invocation. Move on to item 4, consent agenda. Any changes there, Council?
Move to approve. Kiley.
Sale.
All right, motion by Kiley, seconded by Sale to approve that. Any discussion there? All right, let's take a vote, please.
Council members Brecky.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Kiley. Yes. Neitzert.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
All right, that's going to pass 7-0. We will then move on to item 26, approval of our regular agenda. Look for a motion there.
Move to approve.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Kiley, seconded by Sale. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on that one, please.
Council members Brecky.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Kiley. Yes. Neitzert.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
All right, that one is going to pass 7-0 as well. Before we move on with our agenda, just as a reminder, public input, 3 minutes for all items that are first reading, 5 minutes for all items on second reading, and for all regular agenda items, comments are limited to the item under consideration at that time only. So with that being said, Tom, we'll move on to item 27.
Item 27, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, authorizing a refund of municipal property taxes on the principal residence of eligible elderly and disabled persons. Sponsors, council members Sale and Starr.
Councilor Sale?
Thank you. Thank you. This is the second reading of the long-awaited property tax refund qualifications. Just going to go through it quickly and answer some questions that were brought up a couple of weeks ago along with that. This has been over a year in the process that we've been working on it to make sure that it's done correctly. And I'd like to thank Sean Pritchard, Stacy Koistra, amongst others, Jim, for what you've done for this. So you see, property owners must qualify for the state's assessment, and that is defined, as you can see. I have the law here somewhere, but it's defined in state statute as what qualifies. I believe it's under $30,000 for a single person, $38,000 for multiple people. Homeowner market value not to exceed $208,822. A question that Councilor Neitzert had last time, what qualifies as a single family home. We did add that in there for clarification. So it's a freestanding home, twin home, or a condo that is individually owned. The property owner cannot be delinquent on the property taxes for the preceding year, beginning to the capital refund program. So the next slide will show it's a simplified process. You automatically qualified if you go through the state qualifications and you apply with the county. You have to do it by April 1st. The refund will be equal to the municipal property tax, not to exceed $500 annually. Each year, the city council must approve by resolution to make the appropriation there. Just in case we run into some severe fiscal difficulties, it has to be renewed. And if approved, the first refund payment be issued on March 30 or before March 31st. There was a question last time about the state's qualifications, the state's numbers. Yes, there is a bill in Pier that would increase those qualifications numbers, and yes, we would follow right along with what the state did. So we don't have to change ours every year. We would just adopt them. As they would change, so would ours change right up too. So I appreciate that Councilor Starr is along with me. If there's anybody on the council that does a great job when we go through our Board of Equalization, it's Councilor Starr. So with that, I take any questions.
All right, thank you, Councilor Sale. Anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item tonight?
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. I'd like to thank Councilors Sale and Starr for bringing this. It's a good idea and probably something that's been overdue for a long time, and it's always good to, you know, help people out. The thing that has confused me about this is I always say that when government's doing something wrong, they always put a lot of Band-Aids on stuff. And while I think this is a good program, it's a Band-Aid. Now, what have we seen over the last decade? Well, last year we had $1 billion in permits. We beat Omaha, apparently. We've broken records every year, I think I'm thinking it's 10 years, but it may be like 7 or 8. What does that mean? Well, basic math tells you that our valuation in Sioux Falls for property is very, very high. When you have a high valuation, what does that mean? It means you collect a lot in property taxes. Now, I know the portion of Sioux Falls property taxes are less than the county and the school district, but what I've never understood is why do you keep increasing our taxes a percentage every year when our valuations are going through the roof? High percentage of valuations and growth means you have a lot of money in property taxes coming in. And what does that mean? That means there is absolutely no reason you should be increasing a percentage point. But this council has never failed. For as long as I can remember, every year, percentage high, percentage increase, for no good reason. The valuations are going through the roof. What's the answer? Well, the answer is you should be reducing that percentage every year because your valuations are going up to make up for that. What I don't understand is we have this high valuation for property taxes and we're collecting all these property taxes, but we can't trim our own trees, can't fix our own sidewalks. We got to go around and go to the poor neighborhoods and spray all the sidewalks up and make us pay. What do I pay my property taxes for? I raised my hand and I asked that question. Because you're not fixing the sidewalks with it. You're not fixing the streets in the poorer neighborhoods. You're not trimming the trees that you own, the city owns. There's a lot of things you're not doing with the property taxes of what you're supposed to be doing. And I'll go back to the valuation. There's absolutely no reason to raise taxes every year when we have such high valuations. The high valuations and growth is what makes us collect more in taxes. And if we're collecting more in taxes, we have plenty of money to fix things. So like I said, it's a good idea that we're doing this, but it is a Band-Aid. And I'll tell you why it's a Band-Aid. Because you're overtaxing the rest of us. We're giving out, I think last year it's hard to keep track anymore, but I think it was 140 million in TIFs that we all have to pay for and make up for. Shouldn't have to do that. The valuation is increasing by a lot. I can't remember the number what the school district has for evaluation, but I literally almost fell out of my chair. It's unbelievable. I thought it was 100 billion. It was such an astronomical amount, I just about fell out of my chair. But for some reason, every year, we keep increasing taxes by a percentage for no good reason. Just to tax us more. And we have some other stuff on the agenda that proves this. We apparently have $2.5 million laying around in some mattress or something to just give out bonuses.
You can speak on that when the topic's up.
I didn't say what it was. There's lots of stuff on the agenda that have to do with, and I think people are starting to come to the realization that we are overtaxed. And with inflation, we're paying more in sales taxes. We're paying more in property taxes. And now we got to put Band-Aids, and we got to start finding little special groups to give property tax cuts to. Well, the developers have been getting property tax cuts for years. You know, they get the big ones. They get the really big ones. And so, good idea. You can pass this, but it is another Band-Aid.
Anyone else to speak tonight on this? Good evening.
Mike here from Zeros from Sioux Falls. I'd just like to thank Kurt and Pat for bringing this to attention. I think it's a good idea. I have to agree. I think this is I think we can use it, set this example as a state to maybe lobby, maybe our property tax rates are a little high. I think we can probably not take as much every year. I think it brings something to like what Pat Sarr said a few months ago. I mean, he asked it, why do we keep taking more property tax revenue from the state when we can probably set the example and take less once in a while if we're to show that we're not overtaxing the people. But I think not only the property tax, I think we can do the same thing with sales tax as well. I support the agenda, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this? All right, let's get a motion on the floor and we can move into any discussion.
Move to approve sale.
Second, Star.
All right, motion by Sale, seconded by Star. Discussion, council, on this item? All right, hearing no discussion, let's take a vote, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Next item.
Item 28, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations to fund the refund of municipal property taxes on the principal residence of eligible elderly and disabled persons. Sponsors, council members Sale and Star.
Good evening, Sean.
Good evening, council. This is second reading of an ordinance we discussed last week. It appropriates the funds necessary to be able to fund the property tax refunds that you just passed, which we are estimating for the 2022 budget to be approximately $200,000. It would be first appropriated from the general fund to the housing fund, and then it is appropriated out of the housing fund. So while the funding will run through the housing fund, it will be administered primarily by finance. And with passage of this appropriation as well as the previous ordinance on the refund program, we will work with finance in order to be able to send out those refunds by March 31st of this year. Source of this would be funded from the unobligated balance for the general fund. I will note back on the 2022 budgeting cycle that we were on, this was not included in the actual budget, which is why we're appropriating it this evening. However, we been working on this for quite some time, pulling this together, and we did anticipate this would be coming forward, and we did include it in our modeling for future year general fund obligations and balances. If you have any questions, happy to answer those at this time.
Thanks, Sean. Anyone from the public like to speak on this item tonight?
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. I guess I'm a little confused. Seems to be a lot of things happening lately with the council. There's a lot of money left over from last year. But this is 2022, and I'm trying to figure out when did we have a meeting about the budget or our finances from last year? I don't think we've ever had one. I haven't seen anybody from the finance department come up here. You know, it's February 15th. There's been no update to the city council or the public about how much money we have left over from last year. But we're bringing all this stuff forward, like this thing, where the city council had to go find the money, which they traditionally do for things. The council goes and finds the money when they have a program. And they went and found the money because they were told to do so. But when are we going to find out how much money we have left over? It seems like we're pushing all this stuff, giving out all this money from last year, but the public hasn't been told how much money we have left over. Is it 2 million? Is it 5 million? Is it 10 million? Is it just this big pot of money that we can just keep taking from? And ironically, we're doing this right before an election. It's funny how that works, how we're giving money away right before an election. We'll get to that later. But I just question, how can the council even, I shouldn't say legally, because I'm wrong there, but how can the council consciously and ethically give away money from that's left over from last year before they've been even told what money has been left over from last year? Because normally how it's worked in the past is the council is told how much money is left over from the year before. They have a working session and they get to sit and talk about how they spend the money. Because guess what? You're the policy body. You're the ones that decide how the money's being spent. That means you get to sit in on planning how the money's being spent. Not just handed to you at a council meeting like it is tonight. So when is the council going to be, and the public going to be filled in about how much money we do have left over from last year and how that money is going to be spent? Or is it just going to be piecemealed like this is and other things? I've been noticing there's been a lot of money being handed out in different ordinances and agenda items. And I'm still curious, where's this money coming from and how much money do we have left over? I don't know. We're clueless. We just have the director of finance come up here, and every time we want to throw money at something, he just goes, "Oh, don't worry about what's left over from last year. I'll just tell you that we have it. But I can't tell you how much is in there, or where it's coming from, or where did we have money left over? Was it from the Parks Department? Was it from the Housing Department? Was it from the Streets Department? We don't know. We just apparently have this pot of money that we can just grab whenever we need and hand out money 2 months before an election. It's interesting. You know, that's not how I do my finances. I wouldn't go out and, at the end of the year and go buy something that I wanted, a luxury item, without knowing that I had money left over from the year before. I would take a look at my taxes and my finances, and I would say, oh, I have, I got $2,000 left over from last year. I'm going to go buy myself something nice, TV or something. You don't know. You have no idea what's left over. Maybe you do. It hasn't been told to the public. And I know by law you have to tell us. It's our money, by the way, which is kind of funny, But we just keep buying things like crazy. But we have no clue how much is left over. None. We can kind of make some assumptions if we look at the financial reports, the ones that have so far been shown to us. But we don't have no clue. We know that we've got millions in ARPA funds. It's apparently so much we could spend it on tennis courts and butterflies. And by the way, you could have used that money for other stuff too, like city employee bonuses. But you need to stop doing this right before an election, and you need to tell the public how much money's left over from last year and what from departments it's left over from. Thanks.
Anyone else to speak on this tonight? All right, let's get a motion on the floor and we can move into discussion.
Move for approval, Sale.
Second, Star.
All right, motion by Sale, seconded by Councilor Starr. Discussion from the council on this item. Councilor Starr, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been excited about this program since Councilor Sale started working on it. It is always interesting. I think it's probably the most interesting week the council has as part of the Board of Equalization, when we hear from our citizens about how their property is assessed and really the true stories that come it's not as much about the assessment of their home as much as it is that they can't afford to stay in their home because their property taxes have grown so high over the years. We take inflationary gains every year with the CPI and the full extent of raising property taxes as we can. This is a program that's going to give this money back to the folks that need it the most to stay in their home. It's cheaper for people to stay in their home where they want to be than it is to force them out of their home because they can't pay their taxes. And then we have to send them to assisted living, a nursing home, and move them on. At a time when we have, I wouldn't call them record reserves, but I think we heard this afternoon we're over 38% of our budget in reserves, which to me only means we're overtaxing people and putting that money into reserves. If we tax people, we need to put it into programs and for the betterment of the community. This is a small amount that we're funding this with $200,000 with a maximum limit of $500 per person. But it's going to make a difference. That couple $100 is going to make a difference that maybe someone can stay in their home where they want to be if they're elderly or disabled. What people are going to be surprised by is the number of people who don't qualify for this program, who either get too much in Social Security income, they've got a little bit of money in their 401k that kicks them out of the program. And again, Councilor Sale mentioned that the state is going to hopefully adjust that amount, not only the value of their home that's gone up considerably in the last couple of years, but also their income that's come as part of it. So the bottom line is we're making a small step in helping people stay in their homes, but it's not a lot to celebrate. It's a small, small step, but it's one that's going to make a difference to some folks. And I'm glad that people will be able to stay in their home longer that they want because we've given them a few dollars back. So thank you for supporting this through the process. It was a long way through the process. We even got outside counsel to approve that we could give the taxpayers money back to them. So I'm fortunate and proud of this project that we're giving that little bit of money back so that we can help folks. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Other discussion, Council, on this item? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Item 29, please.
Item 29, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 1024 West 17th Street from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the RT1 Single Family Residential Traditional District, number 15428-2021, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Private applicant, John Small.
Albert,
Evening, Council, Mayor, Albert Schmidt, City of Sioux Falls, Planning and Development Services. This rezone is located at 1024 West 17th Street. It's on approximately 0.08 acres, so it's a rather small lot, which is hence the request here. The purpose here is to construct an addition to the existing home on the lot, and the lot is less than 50 feet, which is our minimum standard for the RS zoning district, which it currently is. The RT would allow it to do such. So with that, I can take any questions.
Thanks, Albert. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one? All right, Council, you got any questions here? All right, look for a date, set a motion, set a second reading for Tuesday, March 1st on this item.
So move to approve.
Second, Nitzert.
Motion by Kiley, seconded by Nitzert on that. Any discussion? All right, let's vote on that, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Next item.
Item 30, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located south of West Benson Road and west of North Marion Road from the AG Agriculture District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban, RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban, RD2 Townhome Residential Suburban, RA1 Apartment Residential Low Density, RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density, and C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar Districts, number 15702-2021, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Private applicant, Rose Engineering Incorporated.
So yes, Bros Engineering is the applicant. The owner here is Clint Ackerman. It's located south of West Benson Road and west of North Marion Road. It's a large new annexed area in for new development. Size is approximately 133 acres in the Northwest District. And the purpose of this rezoning again is to construct single-family, multifamily, and commercial district in this brand new area. With that, I can take any questions.
All right, thanks, Albert. Anyone from the public here to speak on item 30? Council, any questions on this one tonight? All right, look for a motion. Set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st.
Move to approve, Brecky.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Brecky, seconded by Sale. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on that one, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Next item.
Item 31, first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 501 South Holly Avenue from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the RT2 Townhome Residential Traditional District number 15759-2021 and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Recommendations set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Private applicant Nova Properties LLC, Ashton Larson.
So this is located at 501 South Holly Avenue, and the size is 0.13 acres. Redeveloping this site on purpose to construct a duplex with a 2-bedroom in each unit. And again, the size of the lot mandates the need for this rezoning to do what they're looking to do for the density they're looking at in this location. With that, I can take any questions.
All right, anyone from the public here to speak on 31 tonight? Council, any questions here? All right, look for a motion to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st.
So move, Sale.
Second, Brecky.
All right, motion by Sale, seconded by Brecky. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on that, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Next item.
Item 32, first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located north of East Madison Street and east of Veterans Parkway from the AG Agriculture, C3 Commercial, CN Conservation, LW Live Work Districts to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban, RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban, RD2 Townhome Residential Suburban, RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density, LW Live Work, C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar, and CN Conservation, number 15805-2021, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Recommendations set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Private applicant Earhart Griffin and Associates, Damian Grable.
All right, long one there. This one's located north of East Madison Road and east of North Veterans Parkway on the northeast corner of the town. Size is 85 acres, and the purpose here is to construct a residential, office, and commercial development. Again, a new area for new development. Any questions I can take?
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone from the public like to speak on 32 tonight? Council, got any questions for Albert here? I'd look for a motion then to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st.
Move
So
to
moved.
approve, Brecky.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Brecky, seconded by Sale. A discussion on this one, council? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Next item.
Item 33, first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 3511 South Gateway Boulevard from the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density District to the RA3 Apartment Residential High Density District, number 15810-2021, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Private applicant, Sarah Paul Korn.
This location is at 3511 South Gateway Boulevard, approximate size of 1.39 acres. And again, that purpose here, rezoning from one density multifamily to a larger density multifamily, is to convert the apartment complex from senior living to market rate apartments and convert some of the common space into additional living units.
All right, thank you, Albert. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one tonight? Council, you got any questions on this one? Councilor Neitzer, go ahead.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was important to note the footprint isn't changing at all. They're just remodeling some of the interior space that's currently like a gathering space to a few more units, which tips them over the top to need to go RA3. But people won't see like another story or.
You're correct. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Albert? All right, look for a motion, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st.
So moved, Neitzer.
And Brecky.
All right, motion by Neitzer, seconded by Brecky. Any discussion on that motion? All right, let's take a vote, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Neitzer,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Next item.
Item 34, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 2225 North Bonson Avenue from the AG Agriculture District to the I-2 Heavy Industrial District, number 15831-2022, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Private applicant, Willitson Lund Engineering, Eric Willitson.
So this is located over at 2225 North Bonson Avenue. It's approximately 27.26 acres in size, just located just on the north side of the Big Sioux River, just on the east side of I-229, or at the Rice Street exit. So again, they're looking here is to construct contractor shop and storage yard in the future.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item? Council, do you have any questions tonight on this? Then I would look for a motion to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st.
Move to approve.
Second Brecky.
All right, motion by Kylie and seconded by Brecky on that. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Neitzer,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Item 35.
Item 35, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 153, Annexation Policies. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Sponsors the mayor.
So I get to talk to you a little bit more about a program we worked on in 2017. The next three items kind of relate to this. I'm going to kind of give a quick background, then we'll let you go vote on each one of them. So in 2017, we did an annexation task force after some requests were made for our public side of things. It took about a year overall process. We started with our task force members here. Again, some of our council members that are here were on that task force. Appreciative of everybody's time on that. We try to take a holistic approach to that task force, include people who had a vested interest like the council, people in the city, and people in the counties. So try to get all those viewpoints in there so they could weigh the comments that we had for them as far as staff, so how we viewed things, and they could bring their perspective into that. We met multiple times. These are the meetings that we had over the course of that year. A vast majority of them were held here in this room and videotaped and are still available on our website in an attempt to try to make sure that we were as publicly available as possible when we saw the demand was there for that. So we felt like that overall worked pretty well. And we hopefully served and got information out to as many people as wanted that information. The topics that we touched on, this is a really quick, brief over a whole year process, but generally we had these 10 topics that we touched on. And what typically happened here is we would prepare information on our comments, our understanding of the topic at hand and how we proceed, and the balance of what we understood we could do versus what we want to do, what both sides of what we saw there, and we presented that to the group. The group then discussed that, and then after everything was done, after we talked about all 10 topics, then they came up with the report, which is also available on our website, and came up with recommendations as that was presented to the council. The first thing that we're here in front of you for is our ordinance recommendation to help solidify and put into the record the official recommendations on city-initiated annexations. So just to be very clear, this is not changing any petitioned annexation process. And again, a vast majority, 95, 99% of all annexations that we get, the landowner is requesting us to annex them. This only impacts those where the landowner is not interested in being annexed, but the city sees a need and a reason to go out there and have that property be annexed and be part of the city. So again, we're setting a stricter standards than are mandated and set by the state of South Dakota, so we're able to do that. And this ordinance puts those recommendations from the task force into our ordinance, so it's more of, for us, it's harder for us to come in and go to properties and try to get them in without them meeting these criteria. So when you look at the criteria, that was one of the main things. Now, the other side of things too, the other two items are more the engineering design standards aspects that I can talk a little bit about tonight, but that also followed with the task force. And again, the end goal there was to look at this and try to make it so that the requirements of meeting our standards weren't as overbearing as they possibly could be. We tried to work with people, make it so it's flexible for them, so we can work with them, not against them, on getting them into our standard to get fire protection, to get sanitary sewer connections and those kind of things. So when you look at this ordinance for number 35, that sets these standards in place, which basically, to simplify it down from all the text I have on the screen for you, is the first one and most important one is, before you can do anything, is the area you want to annex fully annexed around already, all sides, and is that area already developed, fully developed? We define that in the ordinance if you read through it, but basically it means, is the land that's around you being used and built as intended? So if it's a single family house, is there a house on it? If it's a park, it's green space, so it's already gonna be considered. So those are kind of things you're looking at from that aspects of things. Now with that criteria met, then you move on to one of the other criteria that we have in here, those 4, to say, all right, you've met the initial criteria, now we can look and see if you meet one of the 4. If you meet one of the 4, this would then allow staff to initiate those discussions about annexation on the behalf of the city to these areas and talk to them about what that looks like to annex, what they need, what their concerns are, and ultimately, if we can't see eye to eye, we can bring something forward to this council to consider annexation of those areas. So, real briefly wise, the other criteria that you're looking at is, are you adjacent to a street that we already improved or we are planning on improving through the CIP budget? And then the other one is, are we impacting CIPs with extensions of utilities along this area as well? Are they benefiting from any of the expenditure of funds? And then next one is, they have a public health and safety issue that can be corrected with this through utility connections and street improvements. Again, one of the big ones we saw there in a history lesson was like Prairie Meadow Sanitary Sewer District, which came about because they had a health and safety need at that time back in, I believe it was 70s, where high water table caused all their septic systems to cause stuff you don't want coming up to come up. So we had to get in there and get sanitary sewer in there. So those kind of health issues. And last but not least, we didn't want one property to hold other properties up. And so this one's in there for that means of the only reasonable access is through this area. So this allows us then to use that to come in there. So I've drawn some really, really exciting graphics there on the right-hand side, which can also be found in the report if you're interested in looking at those closer, but helps to show those off. So that's all I have for 35, and I can talk more about 36, 37 when they're up.
All right, thanks, Albert. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item?
Scott Harris from Sioux Falls. Would have been nice to have a presentation of this at an informational meeting, since it's been about 3 years from the time that, and I kind of remember the meetings from the time that the annexation board met, and then we're going to do something about it. My feelings on annexation are, unless a citizen absolutely wants to be annexed into the city, I don't know why the city would pursue any of this. We've known our biggest problem in this city and is housing and a deteriorating core. The core has been deteriorating. I mean, Mayor Munson talked about the deteriorating core and rebuilding it. The city should not be pushing into cornfields. That should not be our concern with infrastructure. You must first take care of what you have already before you go out and do other things. It'd be like, you know, having an older truck that, you know, doesn't run very well, and the way you're going to fix it is you're going to go out and buy a new truck and just let that old truck just sit there and rot away when you could have just went and fixed the old truck. You know, and we have this massive area in town, and I tell you guys this a lot, go walk through those neighborhoods, But ride a bike is probably the best way. And those streets look like they've been hit by a bomb. And I've never understood how the streets in the core area can get that bad. How is that? Well, it's been neglected. We've been too busy annexing out into cornfields and, you know, building warehouses and giving away massive tax cuts for it. And we just said, to heck with housing in the core of our city and affordable housing. And you know what? It is going to bite us in the butt. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. The Amazon parking lot's going to be a campground. There's going to be a lot of campgrounds at the warehouses around town because there's no place to stay because you've ignored it. You've continually ignored the housing issue in this town, affordable housing in specifically. We gave away tax cuts for parking ramps and condos and egg roll factories and nothing for housing. And, you know, a couple months away from election, here we are again. Oh, by the way, we're working on the affordable housing issue. We got a plan going 2 months before an election. But, you know, it's not political, folks.
Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight? All right. Counselors, you got any questions for Albert on this one? All right. Go ahead, Counselor Kiley.
Thank you. Really, I don't have any questions for Albert. He did a great job. And this is the document that he was referencing, the 2017 annexation process that has already been approved by the council back at that time. And I think 5 members of the existing council were in on that. And the item specific that is specifically addressed in item number 35 here pertains to what is number 2 on page 7 of this report. And Albert went through that in its entirety. So it was a great review. I don't think we needed an informational for that. Again, it's already been addressed by previous councils. What this does is it ensures that all of these points that we labored on back 5 years ago are actually in ordinance and in policy. So that the work of the annexation task force wasn't in vain, and so that there's consistency from one administration to the next in ensuring that those policies and ordinances are going to be followed. So it basically puts all of these points into ordinance or into policy form, and it does involve planning and engineering. You might remember we addressed a few of these items a few months ago. So it was my intention before my term expires that we made sure that we did have all of these points in ordinance and in policy. And so this basically does that. And by the way, this has nothing to do about proposing annexation. It's about the process of annexation. It actually offers much more flexibility than what was ever offered before to our rural developments. So I appreciate your support on this item and the next 2. Thank you.
All right. Let's get a motion on the floor, and we can move into any further discussion if there is any, and that would be to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st.
Move to approve.
Second, Neitzer.
All right, motion by Kiley, seconded by Neitzer on that. Is there discussion then on the council on this? Councilor Neitzer?
Just a couple quick points that might be helpful, just kind of going back in time. The reason, one of the big reasons why this was devised was there was a lot of concern at the time when there was some discussion about annexation and whether there would ever be city-initiated annexation was uncertainty. That's something that we heard a lot from people that weren't annexed, was the word uncertainty. I'd like to know when that discussion might start rather than having that quote-unquote threat hanging over my head. And so this just adds more certainty that the discussion will not even start, can't even start until these criteria are met. And then my other point is it's important to note that all this is this just says when you can even start a discussion if the city is even interested in starting said discussion. And then if it does start, it has to go through quite a process. There's due process, there's legal remedies, and it's not easy to do a city-initiated annexation. So this is just the first step, and it gives property owners, first and foremost, really some certainty as to whether or not they even have to worry about whether that discussion is going to even be initiated with them. So.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion?
Just one very brief comment. I'd just like to thank, it was my intention to thank Director Eckhoff, Director Cotter, Albert, and other members of their department for the work that they've performed over the last several months to help ensure that we do get these points into ordinance and into policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other discussion then, council? All right, hearing none, let's vote on this motion, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes?
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Item 36.
Item 36, first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 53, Publicly Owned Treatment Works pertaining to private wastewater disposal. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Sponsor is the mayor.
So again, this is a continuation of that to allow that flexibility for us to work with citizens as they need to come in. This allows that agreement of the annexation to be used to help identify when they can connect over. More specifically, this allows us to put into writing officially that they can continue using septic systems until it fails and then connect into our sanitary sewer, opposed to the current side, which has nothing in there, so they might have to throw away a perfectly good system. We don't want people to throw money away. We want to use infrastructure before we cut over and then eventually get them in. So, thank you.
All right, thanks, Albert. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one? All right, council, any questions here? Then we will look for a motion to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st.
Move to approve.
Second, Nitzert.
All right, motion by Kylie, seconded by Nitzert. Any discussion there? All right, let's take a vote on that one, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Item 37.
Item 37, first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 59, Water Department Regulations in relation to water service in annexed areas. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Sponsors the mayor.
All right, last but not least for this one, this now touches on the water connection. Currently says 2 years, this extends it to 5. I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention with these plus the previous 2, city staff with engineering and planning went to IRAB before this board to get their comments and reviews as well. So we'd love your support on this to help allow that flexibility as well.
All right, thanks, Albert. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one? Council, you got any questions here? All right, look for a motion to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st.
Move to approve.
Second, Nitzert.
Okay, motion by Kylie, seconded by Nitzert. Any discussion there? All right, let's take a vote, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Item 38.
Item 38, first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 39, Personnel Regulations and Benefits, Retirement and Pensions, Subchapter Vacation Leave. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Sponsors the mayor.
Good evening,
Mayor,
Bill.
I'd like to recuse myself at this time. I'm going to read a brief statement explaining my recusal. I will be recusing myself from the next 2 votes. I believe the timing and comprehensiveness of these midterm benefits proposals are being voted on so close to an election in which I am a candidate that it creates an appearance of impropriety under Section 34005 of the city's Code of Ethics and creates a conflict of interest for me to participate in them. So I'm recusing myself from this vote, and also pursuant to city ordinance, I will refrain from any further public debate, private comment, discussion, or any participation regarding these items. And then I just have one question for Mr. Greco. Do I need to read the statement twice because it's 2 items? Do I need to come back in, or can I do it like I just did.
I'll just note it since you mentioned it would be for the next two.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. Bill, good evening.
Point of order.
Councilor Erickson, go ahead.
Yeah, my point is why did that said counselor participate in the informational meeting then? If it's a conflict of interest, isn't it a conflict of interest in both ways? She can choose to respond or not respond. It's more of a rhetorical question, so carry on.
No, I'm glad to respond. I wondered about that, but I really needed the information, I guess, to firm up my decision whether or not it was a conflict for me. So I needed to get all the information on it and then decided that, yes, it does present a conflict for me. Thank you.
All right, Bill, floor is yours, sir.
Bill O'Toole, Director of Human Resources. As was mentioned earlier at the informational briefing, we provided kind of a comprehensive review of what we have termed our employer of choice plan, whereby we are pursuing multiple initiatives that target areas such as recruitment, retention, and employee well-being. And I've placed the full document before you. The ordinance that's being proposed here tonight deals with that center section on employee well-being, dealing with offering flexible benefits in the workplace. Those two middle points that talks about reducing the years of service required to accrue vacation time and providing full-time employees with a 40-hour bank of vacation. That's the subject of this ordinance. Other initiatives are pursued via other mechanisms like memorandums of understanding, the supplemental budget appropriation, which is next on the agenda. So I'm specifically targeting just a small piece of the overall plan. And again, the backdrop, I don't want to repeat everything that's already been said, but obviously the reason we're moving this forward is in relation to the labor environment that we're currently in, where we're dealing with low unemployment, high inflation, and cost of living adjustments that were negotiated pre-pandemic. And we have seen our employment data and experience to a degree that we wanted to respond, we wanted to be ahead of it. So it's all part of a larger plan. So it's hard to now just talk about one particular piece of it, but I want to at least provide a backdrop before doing so. The specific ordinance changes in the personnel ordinances before you for first reading. Basically, it does two primary things. It provides a bank of 40 hours to new employees when they enter the city. That's currently not available. We're on accrual schedule today. The second thing that it does is collapses the years of service required to receive additional accruals of vacation across a career and allows us an implementation process to try to equalize some of this. So let's start at the front end in terms of the 40 hours of bank of vacation. If we give new employees a 40 hours bank of vacation in addition to their accruals, they would have up to 3 weeks of vacation. This has been an issue for the city for some time, where when you come into the city, there's not a lot of time for you to utilize for any kind of vacation time because of the accrual-based method. And work-life balance and employee well-being, flexible benefits, that's why we decided to collapse the schedule as well, to provide accruals to employees sooner in their career rather than have to wait a longer period of time. So with that shorter explanation and the understanding that we gave a more comprehensive presentation during the informational earlier today, I would urge your support for the ordinance, please.
All right, thank you, Bill. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight?
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. Didn't know Janet was going to do that, but I'll have to say bravo to her because she's absolutely correct. It is a conflict right before an election. But to talk about the item here, don't have an issue with, providing this stuff with city employees. Everyone likes PTO. We have a different, at my work, depending on how many years you've been there, you get an increase. But it's completely bizarre that we're negotiating this and we didn't negotiate this in an actual contract negotiation and collective bargaining. Why are we doing this in the middle of February, right before an election? You know how I found out about this? 5, 6 weeks ago. No elected official told me about this. City employees have been all chattering about it, telling everybody they can possibly tell. Union reps have been telling people, we're getting a bonus. Mayor told us we're getting a bonus, and other benefits. How does that work? How is it that city employees are told that they're getting something? 6 weeks later, the public and the council finally gets to find out about this, or the public. But city employees have known about this for 6 weeks. And everyone knows the council has to approve this stuff. So how is it that the city employees are going around telling people this stuff? How did they know this? How were they told this? I don't know. I don't know how you can promise something to city employees that hasn't been approved by the council or vetted by the public. When were you going to tell us? They weren't told 3 days ago or last week. I'd understand. 6 weeks. They're all happy about it. They're all delighted. And now, 6 weeks later, we're having a vote on this right before an election, and someone was smart enough to walk out of the room. You should all walk out. But the metrics, the timing, the money, this is quite the circus.
All right, anyone else to speak on this tonight? Come on up, sir. Good evening.
Hey, thank you guys. I just thought. Hunter Berry from Northeast Sioux Falls. About to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of moving here from California, so I'm getting excited for that. To stay on topic though, I actually think this is a great idea. I mean, this is the least we could be doing for people who take care of this city and really run this city, our firefighters, police officers, our city workers who are out there, you know, sweeping the sidewalk, doing the snow plow and driving through all the roads, keeping them clear. It was my first time driving in the snow, December. That was pretty scary. But luckily we had, you know, the city come in and we had enough workers to keep the roads going into downtown clear so that people like me who don't know what they're doing can drive through them and act appropriately. So this is really the least we could do. There's a huge movement in this country talking about giving power back to the workers. And this is really the least we could do for them. You know, I've talked to some of these city employees. I've done ride-alongs with the fire department. I've talked to police officers. I've talked to city workers who are keeping the sidewalk clear, and what they do is hard work. So I think this is a good idea. And there's some speculation that there might be some ulterior motive with regard to the timing. I personally don't think that's relevant at all. We got to look at this for what it is, and it's a good proposal. So I say go for it.
Thanks, Hunter. Yep. Anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? Come on up. Good evening.
Mike again for Zero. I just kind of went, I don't know, good timing or bad timing. I don't know. I just speak on policy wise. I think listening to Greg earlier this afternoon, I think he said it right. I think we should kind of slow it down and kind of see what the data is. I mean, do we really have a recruiting problem? I mean, I think we look before the pandemic, before 2020, where we having a real big issue hiring employees. I don't know if we were or not. I think another part of this, I don't know. To me, I don't know if the government should be really competing with the private sector. I think it might be harming small business. So I mean, if we can create some discussion on that. And in the third part, I don't know if setting precedent wise, I don't know if you really want to get in the business of handing out bonuses. Because in my opinion, I don't know if government should really do that. I think we set our tax rates and we set our expenses. And I think you should kind of stick firm. If they want to renegotiate the contract, I think we should honor the contract and then come back a year from now and discuss maybe bumping up the salaries at that point. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Anyone else here to speak on this? Come on up. Good evening.
My name is Chad Bishop. I live at 7405 South Valencia Drive here in Sioux Falls. So I think Mr. Erickson brings up a few good points that this isn't a chicken and the egg problem. I mean, tax revenue comes from taxpayers, and they're the ones being affected first and foremost by inflation. And so the consequences of policy over the last 2 years, we've monetized, $4.5 trillion, creating new credit. And when the Fed does that, it doesn't buy those assets with capital it has. It does it from credit it creates. Consequences of that are inflation. Friedman would say it's first and foremost always a monetary issue. And so we should understand, nobody should be surprised why prices are high, but the consequences of that are those on fixed income, specifically the elderly, and those are about beginning to enter retirement. They're basically being given a income, the purchasing power of their income is being reduced because of the consequences of the inflation, because of the consequences of the policy. How that pertains to you folks here, I would wait and see how it pans out. If there's truly a hiring crisis at this point in time and there's incentives need to be offered, perhaps, but otherwise wait until the contract expires or renegotiate later. Otherwise, you're asking for people who, the taxpayers who are enduring the burden of the consequences of inflation to also then foot the bill for better benefits for public employees. And I think that's backwards. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? All right, let's move in. Any questions council may have for staff, for Bill. Councilor Kiley?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, before I ask any questions, I want to address what happened prior to this item, or once this item was read into the record. I question the validity of basically making up your own conflict of interest, fabricating a conflict of interest. Because in this particular case, I don't believe there is. If, let's say, for the sake of argument, that it is true, then the individual who just exited this room just violated that same ethical standard when she voted on the property tax refund just a few moments ago. So, in her words, so close to the election. I think it's a dangerous precedent to establish. It's not doing your job as a counselor, and I think it's all politically motivated to put the individuals that are candidates in a position where accusations can be made. And for that reason, I felt it's important to address that and to air my concerns. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Do we have any questions for Bill?
No, actually, I want to follow up on that a
Councilor
little
Starr,
bit, because really my question then goes to the city attorney, because the position of the city's ethics board over time has been it's a self-determination of ethical standards. There are a code that we follow, or canons of ethics that we follow, but it's on a personal. And ethics is a thing that isn't about the law as much as it is a higher standard than what just the law allows or doesn't allow. And to attack someone personally because they made a choice in their mind that this would be an ethics violation or unethical for them to participate in this process as a candidate is really a cheap shot. I mean, that's really what we've got going here. And she recused herself and left. And that's up to her to make that decision. But to include it now into the continued debate about whether this item is successful or not is there. So honestly, this was, I can't do that. This is an item for the ethics board that's why we have that group there. And over the next couple of weeks, maybe in between first reading and second reading, it's something that can be addressed by the ethics board. That's why we have them there to get an opinion and to provide advisory opinions. And I'd suggest anyone who has a problem for or against to seek their advice and to take a look at that. So I'll address the rest later.
I'd like to just respond to that very briefly. Once again, if this is true, then the counselor should have recused herself when we just approved the ordinance allowing a tax break for elderly and for individuals that are economically challenged. It doesn't stand to logic. It's not a cheap shot, and you would know better than I.
Nice,
All right.
nice, thank you.
With that being said, we'll move into any questions that the council may have for Director O'Toole on this. Any questions? Councilor Starr, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Director O'Toole. When you presented this, or we got it publicly on Friday and then this afternoon, with the employer of choice plan, one of the things that is really glaring in the plan that's missing is there's no comment about or anything where we're making an active attempt to diversify the workforce of the city employees. I know that Chief Toom has talked about it as part of the police department. Was there a reason that was left out? I know we've been working on this since, or the administration's been working on this since November, I think you mentioned this afternoon. So when do we add the part about diversifying our workforce and actually going after a group of employees that are much more diverse than our workforce is right now?
Councilor, I don't know that I can, you're right, there's not a specific proposal that targets this in this plan. That is something we're cognizant of annually. We conduct an affirmative action plan each year, so we're aware of our numbers and the occupational groups of how we sit in relation to the marketplace in each of those categories, and we try to set goals on a regular basis. It is certainly our objective to improve those numbers. That is always our goal. But in response to your question, there is not a specific proposal in the 9 initiatives in each of these respective categories.
And there hasn't been a specific objective for the 5 years I've been on the council. We talk about it and we talk about it. We're going to do things. We're going to recruit different. But when do we get to the point where we're going to actually do something and add it as a part of what we're trying to accomplish? And that's more of probably a policy question that falls back on us more than it does the administration having to make that decision.
And I guess I wouldn't necessarily agree that we're not doing anything. I think we have made strides in some areas. I don't have all the data in front of me to speak to it. I didn't realize this was going to be a specific question in relation to this plan. And of course, this particular item is just dealing with the vacation accrual and in the city ordinance.
And then just quickly, are any of the objectives in the ordinance change with the accruals and stuff? Is this something that we normally would negotiate with our different bargaining units and include in the labor contract, or are these outside of that part?
No, as I referenced before, and that's a good question, these accruals, as they're laid out here in ordinance, would apply to certain employee groups, those that are in the bargaining unit. We have memorandum of understanding coming forward that's tied to this process. First reading is today. Second reading is March 1st. Along with the March 1st second reading, we'll be bringing forward 3 collective bargaining memorandums of understanding that incorporate the provisions that you see before you in this plan.
Are the 3 MOUs signed at this point?
They are signed.
Thank you.
Other questions for Bill from the council? All right, let's put a motion on the floor and we can move into discussion then. That would be to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1 on this.
Move to approve.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Kylie, seconded by Sale. Discussion amongst the council. Councilor Sale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, one of the things I do in my current job is hire people, and it's getting extremely tough to do that. And I appreciate the thought and the process that's gone into this from the city's standpoint. They negotiate with the employee groups and the rest of them. From time to time, each one of the counselors up here has to take a hard vote that they'd rather not take. That's what we get paid for. That's what we get elected for. So I believe this is entirely appropriate. I appreciate the hard work that's gone into it. For this vote and the next vote, I would appreciate your moving forward to the second reading. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Neitzer, go ahead.
I talked about this at the 4 o'clock, but obviously not everybody watches the informational. So I just want to give people a little flavor of kind of what I'm thinking about. Most of this I have no issue with whatsoever. We want to be competitive, and you're seeing movement in the market in terms of the sick leave, maternity, paternity leave, day one vacation, the years of service accrual, and for vacation time. Looking at the chart, it should be noted that's by itself a pretty nice new benefit, and that is a financial benefit and a quality of life benefit. And recruitment, we have seen some data saying that recruitment is tough right now. It's tough for everybody, so all of those are good things. What I did put on the record, and I'll put again, is that I'm just still working through the $2,000 retention incentive. Again, just a matter of just kind of coming from my world in the private sector. When we do something like that, it's very targeted, and it has to do with the risk of if we're going to lose employees. And so we are facing the headwinds of inflation, but everybody's getting hammered by that. And I would agree with one of the speakers that certainly I would blame government and printing money for creating these issues. So people are hurting, not just our employees. Everybody's getting hammered by inflation, not the least of which is those on the lower end. But in terms of retention, to get back to that, the question that I kind of just keep going back to is, do you need to give out $2,000 to every employee? And as I had said before, if I was running my own business, I can do whatever I want. That's, I can do that. But if you're talking about tax dollars, we're talking about an extraordinary item here, so maybe it should require some extraordinary proof that there actually is a retention problem, and if you don't give these checks out, that you're going to lose employees, and I'm not sure whether or not that's been established. Now, that being said, our COLA is lower than what we would prefer given what's happening, so that's where I'm struggling a little bit. So it's really the $2,000 item is really the issue. And it has nothing, I mean, we have top-notch employees. I want them to be here, and they provide excellent service to our citizens. But I just struggle a little bit with, do you give everybody an extra $2,000 without even knowing if their pay is in line? Maybe it's better than the market. Maybe they have no intention of leaving whatsoever, and they're perfectly happy. Maybe some money in that bucket would be better used for other recruitment items. So it's just different when you're talking about tax dollars. It's not my money. It's taxpayers' money. And I guess it's, as the speaker did point out, it is maybe worth considering the fact that, a lot of people are feeling the pinch because of inflation. So the optics maybe aren't the greatest either. And maybe in closing, I'm not running for election, so I don't have a dog in the hunt, I guess, but I guess I do struggle with the entire issue. I mean, virtually anything that we vote on that might benefit a citizen could be construed as some sort of a conflict of interest, and I don't think that's grounded in the ordinance, let alone $500 checks are okay, but this is not. But I'll stop there. Thanks.
Any other discussion amongst the council on this item? Councilor Kiley, go ahead.
Just a point of clarification. The last line on the graphic that's on display presently states does not apply to mayor, city directors, chief of staff, or medical appointed staff. It should read does not apply to mayor, city council members, city directors, chief of staff, and medical appointed staff. City council was left off in that last sentence. Thank you.
Got it. All right. Any final discussion here?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead. Is that Councilor Selberg?
It is. Thank you, sir. I think this ties in a lot to a couple of other conversations and things that we've discussed in recent months. And it's been my belief that if we want the best and brightest to lead our city, which I think we all do in whatever capacity that is, compensation is a part of that program. And people need to be compensated accordingly. And whatever we can do to keep the best and brightest and get the people in chairs and leading, we need to do our best to keep doing that. So I am fully in support of this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor. All right. I think we're ready to take a vote then, Tom.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
All right. That's going to pass 6-0. And we'll move on to item 39, please.
Item 39, first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations to fund the full-time employee retention incentive pay and compensation and benefit study Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Sponsors the mayor.
Good
Sean.
evening. Sean Pritchett, Director of Finance again. I come before you with a request, first reading of a supplemental appropriation. It's a total of $2.49 million, 100,000 of which would be designated for human resources in order to accelerate a comp and benefits study, which typically we do every 5 years, but as part of our employer of choice strategy, we'll be accelerating to bring that forward earlier this year. And then the $2.39 million that is related to the employee retention incentive that was spoken about briefly in some of the previous comments, as well as during the informational today. I'd like to kind of preface some of this with a few comments as we kind of begin these discussions. First of all, I want to note that this is something that we have been working on as an operations team, particularly HR and finance, for several months. And so it has been something that we've worked on and worked through, but there's several steps that kind of go along with this process, and it culminates with coming before the council to discuss this supplemental and, of course, the informational today on the employer of choice recommendations that are being brought forward. I want to note what a unique time that we're living in. Right now, we talked a little bit about this at the informational today. We talk a lot about, during our monthly financial presentations over the last several months, about the labor shortages that we're experiencing, the material shortages that we're experiencing, the impacts that it's having on us as a city in terms of some of the costs for some of the projects and construction and concerns that we have there. And we talk a lot about what the concerns are for the private sector as well and the impacts it's having. This has been precipitated and it's been exacerbated by the pandemic and the resulting economic disruption. Some of the things that have occurred over the past year that are unique are positive things. Record high building permits has been positive for our community and shows the growth and confidence people have here. We've had sales tax record last year, 19.3% we were up. That's the highest it's been in 38 years since 1983. Not unique to that, though, are the challenges of inflation running at 40-year highs. And also not unique that the last time we saw sales taxes coming up this high was the last time we saw inflation going at the same record pace that it is currently. And of course, as we talked about, the pandemic, the labor, the materials, and the workforce shortages that we are experiencing coming out of that situation. We're in a unique time which requires a unique approach. We reflect on what other government entities have proposed or are proposing to do, and we're looking at what private entities are doing because we know that we all compete for the same pool of experienced professionals that we want to have as part of our organizations. Bringing forward a supplemental request like this so early in the year for the general fund is unique. For the sales tax capital fund, it's not unique. We typically come together around this time of year and over the next several months, and we talk about projects that we would be able to utilize the excess capital sales tax dollars for. But we don't typically bring something of this nature forward with the general fund. But as Bill discussed, or Director O'Toole discussed in the previous presentation, we are looking to have a comprehensive approach. We want to address retention, and we also want to be able to attract good employees. We need to be cognizant of the impacts that inflation is having and being able to mitigate that. We must be able to react quickly, but we are a government and we have constraints and we have processes and procedures that we must follow, and we have a unionized workforce and we have bargaining. We want to protect our flexibility to continue to assess the economic situation during the time ahead, to be able to adjust and move forward in a balanced approach, because we also recognize that every increase we make to salaries and wages can come at an expense of employee growth, especially at a time when we need to be growing enough employees that we're continuing to provide excellent services. And we recognize that our biggest asset is the individuals that work within our organization. Talk about, protecting the taxpayer. And I don't know if you're in government or whether you're even in the private sector, but I would say the one thing that I've learned over the last several years is, do we pay people what we think we can get them to work for, or do we pay them what we would pay them on the day they tell us they're leaving? because oftentimes we do the former and not the latter, and it is not the best way to have a strong organization with strong people in it. We have a responsibility to provide excellent services, and that starts with having an excellent workforce. We all have different ideas. We talked a lot about different ideas today during the informational, and believe me, these were all things that we discussed between HR and finance as we walked through these different strategies. As we look at this funding opportunity, the question, as we discussed earlier today, is where will the funding come from? For those that have been on the council for quite some time or observers of the council, we know that we present our end-of-year financials in April, as we do every year. We will also present our first monthly financials of the year of March in April, as we do every year, because we have to close the audit and that process before we get to that point, and we do an audit faster than any city in the country. But what we do know is we have now the numbers that are coming together, and now we're just getting through the audit piece, and we're also working our way through putting together the annual financial report, which we discussed at the informational today. But we do know that our sales tax returns were $9.7 million more than what we had budgeted for the year. In our November forecast, we had projected a general fund balance at the end of the year of about 36%, and we do not anticipate this to change. Will likely be improved. We do have a 25% reserve or unobligated policy within our city. Each of the areas that are identified in this supplemental appropriation is based on where the employee is paid from. Just from a procedural standpoint, if we pay a $2,000 employee retention incentive, it's easiest. We would actually have to make some mechanical changes in order to change where they're actually being paid from. There was some discussion today at the information about concerns about having these paid out of the storm drainage fund and the affordable housing fund rather than the general fund. That's something that could be easily amended on second reading if you want to give consideration to that. Just like we did the property tax refund earlier, we can transfer from the general fund to the housing fund and or storm drainage fund and just amend the ordinance accordingly. With that, I am going to turn it over to Director O'Toole, and he's going to talk about some of the factors and considerations that were taken into account as we worked through this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Again, and I mentioned this during the informational briefing, but again, our goal here is to get out in front of this and be as proactive as we can. Some of the data that obviously was very important to us as we looked at this and formulating the plan is we knew we were dealing with a low unemployment environment. In Sioux Falls, the unemployment rate in November was 1.8%. Inflation was running high, and in November it was 6.8%. In December it was 7%, and today it's 7.5%. The base pay COLA for city employees ranged anywhere from 2 to 2.5%. Our turnover rate at the city at the end of 2021 was 9.8%, and in prior years, in 2020 it was 6.8, 2019 it was 8.4, and 2018 it was 7.2%. We've seen a 56% increase in separations in the last year, a 72% increase in retirements, a 46% increase in vacancies posted, a 28% increase in the number of interviews we've conducted, and we normally don't have to go out second or third time to try to fill our positions, and in the period of August through November, we had to do that. We posted 40 different positions, and 8 different times we had to go out multiple times to get those positions. So again, what I'd like to emphasize is we're trying to get out ahead of this. We're trying to put together a very measured and responsible plan that helps avoid some of those critical issues with our staffing. The other thing that we know is that in terms of the value of the $2,000 lump sum, that has different impact for each of the employee groups based on their average annual pay. And I just want to share some of those numbers with you as well. So in our AFSCME group, which represents the vast majority of our employees, a $2,000 incentive payment would represent about a 4% of the average pay. For our police and fire, it's about a 3% of their pay. And for our other employee groups, like mid-management, classified employees, that $2,000 payment would constitute about a 2% pay. So when we look at that in relation to where inflation is running today. This made sense for us. Obviously, we're not done. Engaging in the comprehensive compensation and benefits study is a key piece of getting hard data with respect to our pay and benefits to see just how much that market has been moving the last 5 years. And I think we can all appreciate that, in fact, it has moved in ways we've never seen before. And I would tell you it has in ways I have never seen in the 25 years that I've been with the city of Sioux Falls. So I appreciate the opportunity to come up and revisit some of these issues as well, and urge your support. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone from the public here to speak on item 39?
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. Watching that exchange earlier, it reminded me of something I learned watching politicians over the past 20 years. When a politician gets mad, it's because he got caught. Anyway, as for the elderly freeze, that has nothing to do with this. Mr. Sale and Mr. Starr have been vetting that refund for months, and they could probably answer better, but I know that they've been talking about it for months. It was not some big surprise that was dropped on us on Friday like this was. There's no comparison between those two. Okay, we got a lot of different things going on. Okay, we're gonna give this to the city employees because of inflation. Well, I'm experiencing inflation. This is my money. Why not spend it on the people who are paying it? Why wasn't this negotiated to begin with? We know that the seasonal employees are the short-staffed, why we're short-staffed, but we're not even paying them a living wage. There's a lot of city employees out. Why? COVID. Why? The city decided not to do a COVID vaccination mandate. Well, you get what you pay for. If you don't expect the city employees to get a vaccination, they're going to get sick, they're going to be out. I don't think the city's struggling getting employees. It's a great thing. There's great benefits, there's great medical care. I mean, it's a job you want. I have friends that work for the city, believe it or not. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but it's a good job. It's a very good job. And why are we competing with the private sector? That's not right. The private sector goes out and collects sales taxes and funds this government, and now we're trying to steal employees from them? Doesn't make any sense. We could have used ARPA funds like Rapid City did. They did this back in the fall before an election, which was a smart time to do it. They used ARPA funds. They had a very public debate about it. They decided on what they were going to do. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to spend it on tennis courts and butterflies. There's no metrics here. Councilor Neitzer brought this up in the informational. What are the metrics here? Why don't we do the study first? Why don't we postpone this till after the election? Do the study first and see what we should be paying them. No. I'll tell you what this is. It is for the reason why Miss Brecky left the room. It's a bribe. And it's not just a bribe on the city employees that are going to get it. They are married. They have families that vote. So they're going to vote. Their spouses are going to vote. This is horrible timing. And I've never seen something so, well, I've seen a lot of corrupt things in the city, but this is unbelievable. Spending money that we don't even know where it's coming from, because we haven't had a financial report, 2 months before an election. Wow.
Anyone else here to speak on this? Come on up, Hunter, and then David.
Thank you. Hunter Berry again from Northeast Sioux Falls. Again, I have the same opinion that I did on the last one. I think it's absolutely necessary. I think it's not only a good thing, but again, it's necessary. I mean, fuel is like $3.30 a gallon here now, which when I moved here 11 months ago, it was only $2.85 a gallon. You know, grocery prices, they're up 7, 8, 9% in some cases. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anything we can do, again, to help these workers pay their bills. They're not exempt from paying bills like the rest of us. They have to balance their checkbooks and fill up their cars and put food in the fridge like everybody else has to do. And again, I don't see the, I don't understand the opposition to it really. I mean, I think it just is common sense. When inflation is as high as it is this year, it only makes sense to give the workers the pay increase. I don't understand why we're so against that. We're not creating any new taxes to pay for this thing. I read the proposal before I got here. It's not doesn't have a detrimental effect on people. We're not increasing sales taxes. We're not increasing property taxes for it. This is money we already have. So again, these are hardworking people. I mean, I talk to the police officers, the firefighters, the people who work out in the street, the people who plow the roads. The private sector can do a lot of things, but they can't do everything. And it's necessary that we remain competitive and pay the city workers what they deserve, because otherwise you're going to get into a situation where, you know, we reject this proposal and we don't give them what they want. We don't give them the money that they need, the benefits that they need, the compensation they deserve. And then these same workers are going to go over to the private sector because a company offered them a $2,000 sign-on bonus or whatever. And then they're going to go over there, or they're going to move out of state or do whatever they got to do to feel appreciated. And, you know, you're going to end up in a situation like they have in New York City or in Sacramento or in San Francisco or Seattle, where you got city workers, police officers, firefighters resigning from their job because they feel walked over and they feel unappreciated. And, you know, their situation's a little different. They require a vaccine. They require the mask mandate for all their city employees, and that's why a lot of them are walking out. But it's the same underlying problem. They feel unappreciated and they feel walked over by people that are higher than them. So it just makes sense. It makes sense to pay these people more when we got inflation like it is today. It's so unprecedented and just so, it shocks me. I mean, even to this day, I mean, the prices every week are going up. So it just makes sense to raise pay for people like this. So again, I say go for it.
All right, thank you. Come on up.
Mike again. Just a few things I got thinking about. When we talk about the money, the actual money itself, the $2,000, is that would that be like a one-time payment? Are we going to spread out over 52, 26 paychecks? And another thing is, where I was going with this, the other part of the policy is giving employees the incentive to, what is it, $500 incentive to go out and help recruit. Is that good policy versus, or is that considered profiting from taxes? I mean, in the spirit of, was it in the Constitution, Article 11, Section 11, would that kind of violate profiting from our taxes? Just an angle I'm taking it. And then 3, being a family, my family personally from the automotive industry, the repair shop and selling cars and stuff, we aren't necessarily promoting bad wages. We're actually paying, the auto industry is actually willing to pay top dollar for wages, compensation. Some get wages, some get commission. And we're even offering good wages, we can't find workers. So, I mean, what really is the problem here stemming from the economy? Is it too much federal oversight? Is the federal, I mean, are people choosing to stay home collecting the federal revenue, federal tax dollars? And is that why, I mean, I think the city and private sector are both struggling because we're in that same boat with the federal government kind of manipulating the economy. Like they've done that for years. And staying away from all those other comments, but I think policy-wise, I think could we just treat this as informational and maybe move it on until after the election and just and put it as towards more of a budget issue come July. And I think this is a very good idea. The mayors that we got. I think just timing-wise, I think we can probably discuss it during the next contract and during budget talks come July. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Come on up.
Greetings. I'm David Zokaitis. Unlike other people here tonight, I'm here to talk about the retention bonus, agenda item 39. So the proposal in brief is to give $2,000 to every city employee just so they stay around. That's retention bonus. Now, if you're in a business and you're having a hard time with a project and people are leaving in droves, that's a good time to have a retention bonus. But I don't see evidence of a citywide retention problem at this point. I did see a little note there on South Dakota blog that said there's only 22 jobs open in the city government, and most of those are underpaid internships. There's about 3 ethical problems with this particular point, with this particular agenda item. And the first one is it looks like you're trying to buy votes from city employees and their families. The election is 2 months away or less, and you want to give them a whole bunch of money. It looks like you're trying to buy votes, especially without evidence of a retention problem in the city government. Another problem is that this leaked out maybe 5 weeks ago, so it looks like we've got a backroom deal ready to go that did not include any citizen input. And there's my reference for the, apparently, there's my reference. And I don't like to promise things to my kids before it's definite, and it looks like that promise was made to city employees a little early. So I've got some recommendations. I'd like to recommend that you vote against the retention bonus. We need honest and efficient government. And, you know, take some time out in nature to relax and feel good. I'd like to thank a few people for airing this story, Kelloland in particular, Scott Erisman with the South Dakota blog, some anonymous tipster, and we need to thank the Good Earth because it's the Good Earth. And there it is. There's a view from the Good Earth State Park. And have a good evening, everybody.
Anyone else here to speak on this?
My name is Chad Bishop. I live at 7405 South Valencia Drive here in Sioux Falls. I do appreciate the acknowledgement of the competition between the public and private sector. I also share your frustration that you expressed given the circumstances we all find ourselves in. I would like to explain, Mr. Erisman did previously that tax revenues are already going up as a result of inflation. So both in the valuations for property taxes and then in the increased revenues for sales taxes. So while they're not levying additional taxes, tax revenues have gone up and they're paid by the citizenry. Also, I'd like to point out that when we're paying public servants, we're paying them with tax dollars. Those tax dollars are collected in a unique way. You have a monopoly on the use of force, and so you have the ability to seize someone's property. You have the ability to put them in jail. You have the ability to do those things. The private sector does not. There's a big difference. Would like to address what Councilor Starr mentioned with respect to the Improving Diversity Program. I'd like to understand if he's advocating for going beyond the law and taking the affirmative action when considering equivalent candidates. Are you advocating for actually discriminating further based upon what criteria, specifically race? What would that be? That's the end of my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else speak on this tonight? All right. Councilors, questions for Bill or for Sean on this item? Councilor Starr, go ahead.
If I could, for Director O'Toole. I think we all do. We feel like we're in a snow globe that just got shaken up and it's going everywhere, and we're trying to make sense and find a pattern of the flakes floating through the globe. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is the compensation and benefits study. How do we get a really good picture of the economy at this point, you know, taking a look at what we're doing so that we have something from this study that helps us go forward? And does that snow have to settle out of the globe a little bit to get a feel for it? Or how do we put the methodology together to really get a good picture of where we're going? Or how do we guide us of where we need to be?
Council, all I can tell you is that you've got to launch that project at some point in time. Obviously, we've been dealing with this for some time. 2018 was the last study. I do believe the market has moved considerably. You're constantly looking at that market, and I think that one of my comments was we might have to engage in this process maybe a little more frequently to keep a better pulse. Now, obviously, whenever we engage in the collective bargaining process, we're continually collecting data to see how we're doing when we sit down and bargain with the unions. So that helps us to stay competitive. But you might see that much more frequently, whereas we run an every 8 to 10 year period historically. That may be more frequently going forward, but that at least informs you what your peers are doing in the industry so that you can behave and react so that we continue to pay a competitive wage and benefit package at the city of Sioux Falls.
Have we started discussions with the consultant to do this study for us? How did we get to is 100,000 enough? Is it too much? What are the folks saying that do this every day?
We look to engage in an RFP process. We'll solicit for proposals. We'll create an entire process that will probably cover the next year, frankly. It's going to take time to launch all that process from start to finish. We've been through it, like I said, I've been through it personally 3 different times since the year 2000. And we've got a very well-established process that's a very inclusive process as well. We include our unions really from the beginning. And council obviously will be bringing forward a proposal for a professional services contract at the appropriate time.
But we're funding it now.
Right. We want to get that process started so that we can wrap it up so that we're ready for bargaining beginning of next year for implementation in 2024.
Okay, so we'll fund it before the end of 2022, though, by soliciting the consultant.
So we can get started and get that professional services agreement in place and try to wrap things up so it can inform us as we go into bargaining. That's the idea.
So there'll probably be some costs in 2023 that are in addition to the 100,000?
No, I don't
think that more than covers.
Costs. No.
Okay. My other question revolves around the MOUs, because one of the things that we keep talking about, and one of the things that has always concerned me since I've been on the council, is that we internally spend months working on things, and then we make it public on Friday, and we're surprised that on Tuesday the public's upset because we haven't brought them along with us in the process. And they always accuse us of openness and lack of transparency and moving those things forward. We don't feel like it's that way because, or at least the administration's been working on this and gave it to us last week and asked us for our opinions in this short amount of time. But I guess I want to concentrate on, that the administration had signed MOUs before you brought it to the council's knowledge that we were moving forward with this plan. So we had a signed MOU with the FOP when?
I don't have the exact dates, but that would be typical that if we're going to ask them to amend the existing contract, that they would sign it. They know full well, just as it was noted on there, that any action to do that is subject to council's approval. Everybody in our arena knows that that's just how this process works. In the FOPs, for example, they had to have an issue and a vote to approve it. They did that and then subsequently put their signature on it, knowing full well that it has to go through a ratification process from the city council as well.
But at this point, if the council said, you know what, 2,000 isn't the right number, 2,500 is the right number, or 3,000 is the right number, we're painted into a corner at this point where we can't make that change. Could we?
At this point, your action would be to vote on the MOU as it's presented. The business of negotiating labor contracts is a function of administration. We negotiate those contracts. That is how we have always done it.
But a function of the council is to allocate the resources and the funding to fund what you're doing. So we're a client of yours as part of the negotiation. There are 2 sides to the negotiation. If we're not included in the discussion and you make a plan, then we have to insult the employees by voting it down at this point. See where we feel like we're painted into a corner in this situation? Because you chose not to include us in the process.
I guess I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that entirely. I understand what you're saying, but that is how the process works. Just as the union members vote to approve what has been negotiated, we do the same thing when we get to the conclusion, we get a tentative agreement, we bring that forward. If the council didn't want to for some reason, they may have their own reasons. If they didn't want to support it, they would vote it down. It would require us to go back.
Which really takes us a long ways down the process and doesn't make the employees feel good. The whole idea of what we're trying to do is make the employees an incentive and a retention plan for them, but we're leaving one side of the equation totally out of the discussion process until the deal's done, and then say, well, you really can't vote against this. That's the frustrating part of being on the council, is so many deals come to us from the administration that says, you know, it would be in bad faith if you voted against this at this point. So I'm going to be the one to tell 1,300 employees they're not going to get a $2,000 bonus because I don't think it's the right amount. They don't care whether I think it's the right amount, whether it's too high or too low. They're already starting to spend that money in their mind. I do with every bonus that's proposed at my work and any time that we do those kind of things. So we put the cart before the horse. That's it for my questions. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the council? All right, let's get a motion and then we can move into discussion. And that would be to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, March 1st.
So move, Sale.
Second, Kylie.
All right, motion by Sale, seconded by Kylie. Is there discussion on this, Councilor Neitzer?
Yeah, I'm not interested in participating in any of the noise or allegations about timing. I don't like to get into anything that's making assertions without any proof. But the one thing I do want to say is, again, I think the vacation thing in and of itself is a nice new benefit, and I agree with all of it. I'm going to continue to go back to the retention incentive because I think a retention incentive by definition should probably address a retention problem, and I'm not sure that anybody's established that a retention problem actually exists. So I kind of wonder if we're getting ahead of ourselves. And I would agree in part with Councilor Starr in that it puts us in I'm in a tough position because I don't want to be perceived as I don't care about the employees. And so, if I vote against that piece, I certainly could be, and that would be unfortunate because that's the last thing that I believe. I care deeply about our employees. But I also care deeply about citizens and tax dollars who, I do wonder, like $2.4 million. I mean, if I'm just doing like a little dirty math, I almost wonder, could you do a sales tax holiday for maybe a full week of the year? As an alternative and give everybody a little bit of relief. I'm just throwing a number out there and I'm not necessarily proposing that, but so that's what I'm just struggling with. I get the rest about recruiting and all of that. It's really, really difficult. It's hard to even know why people aren't applying. I'm not even sure it's pay. But again, the retention issue, that's a pretty heavy, and I get it. We're constrained by, we have union contracts, so you don't have the same, you can't necessarily do targeted things. It's an all or none deal. But I think the problem will continue to be that I don't think anybody has established that there is a retention problem, and we're in the position of saying that expend $2.4 million because something might happen, and that's difficult when there's not necessarily any proof that it will happen. Thank you.
All right, other discussion on this? Councilor Starr?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I honestly don't believe we have a retention problem at this point. The case hasn't been made, it wasn't made, and what we do have is a recruitment problem. So you have to ask, why do we plan a bonus? And is it really a bonus if everybody gets a bonus? The other thing is, I'd be a lot more receptive if we're talking about retention if we added it to the base salaries of the employees rather than one-time money. What this amounts to is giving cotton candy to someone who's hungry. It'll make them feel good for a little bit. It'll get them by for 6 weeks and make them feel good, but it doesn't solve the problem that we haven't made the case that we have. Will we eventually have a retention problem? I think that's on the horizon. What we don't also have is an emergency, and this has been brought forward as an emergency. Yes, the administration has spent months working on this. What they haven't done is worked on it with the community and said, do you have any suggestions? In the short time when we had an informational meeting this afternoon, we had several ideas that came up that have made this process better. And by including the public and having an open and transparent process, it makes it better. It's the people's money, and they should be included in the process. They shouldn't get a half-hearted notice on Friday, which if you read the agenda, you have no idea there's a $2,000 bonus from the writing on it without digging into the agenda. And to be quite honest, families and the folks of Sioux Falls are busy rather than having to dig for information on a Friday afternoon that's released for a Tuesday night meeting. I'll bet there'll be a lot of discussion about this proposal over the next couple of weeks until we do second reading. Until then, at least at this point, again, I'm not convinced there's an emergency here. There's just a need for sugar. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this? All right. Hearing none, then we got a motion, a second, to send this to second reading. Let's take a vote, please.
Council members Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr.
No.
All right, that's going to pass 5-1. We'll move on to item 40.
Item 40, a resolution of intent to enter into a lease of municipal real property, sponsors the mayor.
Stacy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is the council's annual resolution stating its intent to lease municipally owned real property as required by SDCL 9-12-5.2. Resolution references and includes 42 different properties. That includes farmland, green space, a drainage property, and tower properties.
All right. Anyone from the public here to speak on item 40? Council, you got any questions here for Mr. Koistra? All right, look for a motion to approve item 40.
Move to approve.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Kylie, seconded by Sale. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on that, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
All right, that's going to pass 7-0. Item 41.
Item 41, a resolution advising and giving consent to the appointment of members to certain citizen boards, those being Richard Kerr to the Airport Authority Board, Erica Mullally to the Business Improvement District Board, Main Street, Elmar Della Basic and Dawn Marie Johnson to the Commission on Human Relations, and Brian Jackson and Ben White to the Infrastructure Review Advisory Board.
All right, I see Dawn is here. Dawn Marie, thank you for being here. Any of those other folks that we just read off here tonight? All right, not seeing them. Anyone from the public want to speak on this topic?
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. I'd like to thank, I know you guys did this, I mean, probably been over a year ago, but I'd like to thank you for putting the biographies on the agenda so we can read about who these people are. And then we can, if we're even more interested, we can go Google them and find out what they do in their lives and their careers and LinkedIn and all that other stuff. So that's a really good thing to do. That's a good open government thing to do. I know these people are volunteers, but they are public officials once they sit on these boards. So it's good to know who they are.
All right, anyone else to speak on this? Come on up, ma'am. Is this on this item? Okay, then. No, that's okay. We'll get to you in a little bit. So I look for a motion to approve this item, please.
So moved. Sale.
Second, Kylie.
All right, motion by Counselor Sale, seconded by Counselor Kylie. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote, please.
Council members Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Council, do we have any new business we want to discuss tonight? All right, hearing none on that, we'll move to general public input. As a reminder, it's 3 minutes per person on topics we did not cover earlier in the agenda. So now you can come on up, ma'am. Yep. I'm going to let her come on up. Yep. Ladies first. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Sarah Duell. I'm going to lower these.
There you go.
I'm so darn tall, right? I want to take just a chance right now at the end of the meeting for a brief continuation from the subject I did speak on last week, which is something different, I realize, and this topic you've been talking on is highly important to recognize that. But I explained for council members about my experience for going to Avera and being turned away for getting an appointment that I had. It was scheduled a little more than a month prior to. And I also mentioned that I'm a brain trauma survivor due to several mishaps in my life. And a good friend of mine that used to live here in Sioux Falls, who is an advocate, has informed me a week or two ago that from his knowledge that apparently there's an average of between 150 and 200 people per year with apparently, from the little bit that he mentioned, with scheduled appointments at both hospitals in town, Avera and Sanford, that are turned away from, once they go there, that are turned away from getting their appointments. So I don't know any specific details and whether that's continuing. However, I am the daughter of a doctor and a nurse, and there are certain standards I was raised with. And that, to me, and I hope it is, unacceptable with everyone else for this evening. And I just want to ask if it's possible at a later time, or I hope it's possible at a later time, that somebody on City Council could please look into that and just try to, verify and for getting to the bottom if that's continuing. Because everyone does deserve medical care. It's a basic survival need. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else for general public input tonight?
Scott Harrison, Sioux Falls. I want to talk a little bit about, I've noticed that since COVID started that the council meets telephonically. A lot of you, I don't think you've had a full dais up here in person since COVID. Don't have a problem with that. I think that's fine. You guys should be allowed to do business. The school board does it, the county commissions do it. It's fine. I don't care what you have. I don't care if you got COVID, shingles, influenza, you're hungover, don't care why you're here, not here, none of my business. But as long as you are participating, that's good. I look at this as a fairness issue. Now, if you guys want to do this, which I totally support, I'm fine. But the public should be able to do it too. I sometimes watch how sad it is when, not me, who's able-bodied and lives a mile from here, can be here. But there's a lot of people who can't be here, and they have to make arrangements. I think it's 45 minutes to wait for a paratransit bus to be here. Why can't we just let them call in their public input as long as they do something in advance? You need to have the right rules for it. I get it. I don't want to get into that with only 3 minutes. But I feel so bad that they have to get a paratransit bus. They have to come here. One guy has to have a translator to come all the way down here to do this, while you guys can sit at home on the couch in your pajamas and just phone it in, which I don't have a problem with. So why can't we have something for people who can't get here? And, like I said, the rules that have to be ironed out so they can call in. Other boards do it. I think the school board allows it as long as you tell them in advance. I think the county commission allows it. I've seen other city boards do it. It's allowable. The Parks Board has done it. They've let people call in when it was in COVID. And it shouldn't be just a COVID thing. I know that a lot of you that are calling in telephonically are not sick. There's nothing wrong with you. You just didn't want to come to the meeting. You're going to do it at home on the couch. It's true. You know it's true. Some of you were even here for half the meeting. Like I said, I don't have an issue with that. But you should allow the citizens who fund this government to do the same, especially if they cannot, if it's difficult for them to be here. Elderly, it could be any reason. Sick, but they want to talk on something. You should really consider that. Or you should stop doing it yourselves and all sit up on the dais and be here, or not be here. And by the way, you still need to get rid of the E1, E2 ordinances for the bike trail. That needs to be done before spring. It's a big tourism thing. We got to allow people to use electric vehicles on the bike trail. Thank you.
Anyone else for general public input tonight? Come on up.
Hunter Berry again from Northeast Sioux Falls. Just really unrelated to anything we talked about, but something maybe we can discuss more in the future. A couple weeks ago, I'm sure everybody's heard there was a tragedy in Minneapolis where a young man was killed in his apartment by police. It was a victim of a no-knock warrant. They didn't announce who they were before they entered the apartment and made entry with guns drawn. There was some back and forth real quick for maybe a few seconds before they opened fire. Regardless of what anybody's position is on Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, whether you're in support of it or whatever, it doesn't matter. My understanding is that no-knock warrants are allowed in Minnehaha County and they're allowed in Sioux Falls. They're not common. They haven't really been used that often, but my understanding is it's still the policy of the sheriff's office and the city police department to engage in that if they feel it's necessary. I'm hoping that at least some of you guys, or maybe even just one of you, can maybe have a conversation with the sheriff's department, with the city police department, with the city attorney about that. It concerns me as someone who is a proud supporter of the Second Amendment, who owns guns, who has guns in the home, and who carries consistently on a regular basis when I'm out in public. It concerns me that our police department can, come in, maybe they have a warrant, but maybe there's a mistake on the address. Maybe they screw up the last name of the person that they're supposed to be going after. And instead of going after the right person, they come after me. And then, they pound on the door. I think that there's an intruder in my home, and I come out with a gun and they open fire. So that's concerning to me, and it should be concerning to anybody really who, even if you don't own a gun, even if you're not a pro-Second Amendment person, whatever, it can happen to anybody, and it can happen to any one of us. So you guys have more breach and more power than I do when it comes to contacting people like this and talking to people about this issue. You have more access to the media than I do. So I would just appreciate it if even just one of you raised awareness about that issue, again, regardless of what your viewpoints are on police or firearms. I'm personally pro-police. I mean, my dad was a state trooper for almost 20 years. My stepmom at the time was a sheriff's deputy who worked undercover narcotics. My biological mom, was a paralegal for U.S. Department of Justice. Police make mistakes. They make mistakes all the time. They were pounding at my door 3 months ago because my neighbor got her car broken into. And they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we got the wrong apartment. It's actually the apartment 2 doors down from you, so we apologize." Well, you pounded on my door without announcing who you were, and I thought you were a burglar at first. I almost came out with a gun. So it's dangerous. It's dangerous for the officers, and it's dangerous for people who live in the city to have to worry about that. So I would just encourage at least somebody to at least raise awareness and start a conversation about it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for public input tonight? All right, seeing none, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Chad Bishop. I live at 7405 South Valencia Drive here in Sioux Falls. Let me begin by saying you should always begin by trusting your experts until they give you reasons not to. If you as policymakers have been operating under the assumption that the recommendations made by our medical experts, both local and national, with respect to natural immunity, as represented by the CDC, represent a broad scientific consensus, I would respectfully request that you watch the following clip of an interview with Dr. Paul Offit, published January 25th of this year. In this clip, he recounts the meeting where he was, quote, asked along with 3 other people to advise the administration on whether or not natural infection should count as a vaccine. Per his recollection in the interview, those attending the meeting were himself as Director of Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, the CDC Director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, then NIH Director, Dr. Francis Collins, U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, and Dr. Anthony Fauci, the Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. In this interview, Dr. Offit recalls, I mean, you've been vaccinated, essentially, but here, and I think it was probably more bureaucratic than anything else, it is not surprising at all that if you're naturally infected, that you will develop high frequency of memory of B and T cells, which should protect you against serious illness. And I think that is what the CDC now has shown. Later he says, but the 4 of us were asked to comment on did we think natural infection basically should count in situations where the vaccine is mandated. And I was one of 2 people that said yes. The other 2 people said no. Please note Dr. Offit's bio states, internationally recognized expert in the fields of virology and immunology. So a broad scientific consensus is now a 50-50 split vote in a secret meeting which was never publicized. Why are you just hearing of this now? Tonight, I'm asking you to do the following. File a FOIA request for the minutes of this meeting. Alter the city's COVID-19 vaccine outreach campaign to inform parents of their ability to screen their child for prior immunity before having a COVID-19 vaccine administered to them. In addition, I'm asking for you to consider subsidizing the subsidized screening for prior immunity by reimbursing families of SARS-CoV-2 antibody or adaptive T-cell response assays. Better yet, just offer it free of charge. Again, I'm quoting Dr. Offit from a different interview. So sure, I think that if all parents decided to vaccinate those children, that would certainly contribute to herd immunity, but that's not an argument I would ever make for a parent, which is that you're vaccinating your child to protect others. No, you're vaccinating your child to protect your child. Given the data I have provided in the last several weeks, this begs the question, so what benefit is there to a child who has already recovered from COVID-19 to receive any of the vaccines on offer? If there is no benefit or it is negligible, yet there's still risk, is it ethical to continue your child vaccination campaign without informing parents of a potential prior immunity and screening before vaccinating children? Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Anyone else for public input tonight? All right, look for a motion to adjourn us out, please.
Move to adjourn.
Second, Brecky.
All right, motion by Kylie, seconded by Brecky. All those in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Have a good night.